Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Trans sports have been a really popular topic for a long time now. I did videos about it way back in the day. I figured that the conversation would kind of die down. If anything, I feel like the conversation has just gotten more and more intense. There have been a few trans athletes in the news lately. Leah Thompson, there was somebody named Isaac, I believe. But today's video is not gonna be about them. I don't want to get into it. I'm not going to talk about it. I don't want to do it. However, I do want to talk a little bit about the conversation, and I figured a good way to do that would be to react to a Jubilee video in which we have some trans athletes talking to some cisgender athletes, and I figured it'd be a fun video to react to and kind of do the little play along thing where I give my opinions at the same time, you know? Because of course, not all trans people think the same. I don't think that I'm going to necessarily agree with everything that these people are saying, so let's get into it. I post videos twice a week here on my channel, so if you guys are not yet subscribed, go ahead and do that right now. I'll wait for you as I rip my hair out by accident. Are you done? Thank you very much. But yeah, with no further ado, this is a 20-minute long video, so let's get into it. Before we start, I am not an athlete. Just gonna get that out of the way. Not me. So I don't have that perspective, but I've seen the data, okay? I've seen the data. I'm so annoying. Anyways, I'm gonna skip the introductions, but just know it's 3 cisgender athletes versus 3 transgender athletes.
Trans athletes have an unfair advantage.
I'm not wasting any time here. Okay. This is kind of a complicated question. There are a lot of factors that go into it. So I'm going to try to, keep it a little brief. This is a reaction video. It's not a dissertation or anything like that. Oh my God, I'm throwing things. I think that trans athletes can definitely have an unfair advantage. However, I feel like when people say, oh, trans women have an obvious advantage, blah, 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 they're not actually considering whether or not it's a substantial advantage. They're just kind of like, well, they're really men, so of course they have an advantage. For the general public, in my opinion, people don't really know exactly what hormone replacement therapy does. It doesn't do anything crazy. It doesn't change your skeletal structure or anything, but it does make some pretty substantial changes. The greatest of which being, at least for trans women, the reduction of testosterone. This does a lot of things to your body, For cisgender men, that testosterone is what gives them the ability to build muscle really quickly. It helps them recover faster in sport. It helps them be able to train longer in sport. And when testosterone is suppressed for an extended amount of time, those advantages pretty much disappear. This has been shown in a few studies. There are some, people that disagree with those studies, but the strongest studies that we have right now point at testosterone being the leading factor in athletic performance. Of course, all sports are going to be different, but I think the average between elite males and elite females is about a 10 to 15% performance difference. And there was actually a study where they gave cisgender females testosterone for a period of time, and it showed that their athletic performance improved about 8%, which, doesn't account for the full 15. But we also have to think about, the amount of testosterone that they gave them would not bring them into the natural male range. If they gave them the amount of testosterone that, cisgender men have, I can't say for certain, but I think it would bring it up to that amount if we extrapolate the data or whatever people like to say. I don't fucking know. At least that's my opinion right now with the data that we currently have.
Well, biologically, transition usually happens after puberty, right? So if this biologically male athlete goes through puberty, he gets better bone structure, he has all these skills that he enhances, all these muscle that he puts on, and then he transitions.
Do you hear that? Car beeping outside? Thank you. This is the thing. They're like, well, having a larger skeletal structure obviously is going to make you better at sports. Not necessarily. In basketball, yeah, being taller would give you an advantage, but in gymnastics, you want to be small. She mentioned muscle mass, which again, that's true. Males have more muscle, but that's an effect of testosterone that goes away when you suppress your testosterone. I mean, yeah, you could argue that people with testosterone should not be able to compete, but once they reduce their testosterone for a certain amount of time, I think that a fair competition is definitely possible.
Yes, your testosterone levels go down, but you're always just gonna have that things that you've gone through during puberty that you have after you've transitioned.
You have to elaborate. What things? What are you talking about? You mentioned muscle mass and height. Height is not always an advantage. Muscle mass goes away when you stop testosterone. When you stop testosterone, my natural testosterone was something I was doing.
I think it's dependent on the gender that they are transitioning to. For example, trans women do have somewhat of an advantage. Biological men are naturally born with higher bone density and larger lung capacity and a larger heart, and that's not something that can necessarily be changed with hormones.
There is an argument to be made about bone density because when your bone density is lower, you have more of a risk for fracture, so it can affect how long you can train. Same thing with lung size. The amount of oxygen that you can, take in and release is going to affect how efficiently your body is going to perform. So yes, there could be a little bit of a difference, but the studies that we have right now don't really point at those being significant factors. And we have to remember that in sports, it's never a level playing field. You know, some cisgender women are going to have larger lungs than other cisgender women. Some are going to have denser bones. And you can even extend that to trans women versus cisgender women. You know, some cisgender women may have larger lungs, a larger heart, denser bones than some transgender women. You can't just make those strict generalizations. Not to mention, like, bone density, you can improve with the right nutrition. Lung size, you can also improve with different exercises, stuff like that. So it's not set in stone. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
For me, it's just on average, guys are typically a little bit stronger, a little bit larger, a little bit taller. So depending on the sport especially, it can give them a large advantage when you're looking at something like that. When it's something like swimming, having that ability to be a little bit larger lung capacity will overall affect that.
Give me some data. Give me some studies that show that it's a significant factor. You can't just be like, well, obviously, if you have bigger hands, you're going to be able to swim faster. Not good enough.
There's a large group of people that no matter what I do in a sport will always automatically assume that I have an advantage. But they're not taking into account hours that I put into practice, hours that I put into weightlifting to become a better athlete. Roller derby is probably 90+% cis women. I get my ass handed to me. Like, yes, I am tall, and I can see that can be an advantage in some sports, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that I have an advantage.
Oh, yeah.
And also, there are cisgender women that could be just as tall. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're gonna rule somebody out based on height, you gotta have a height cap for everybody. But yeah, I really, really do agree with what they're saying, that, you know, people will just assume that people have an advantage because they were born male. And like, I understand, you know, I get it. But when we're talking about elite athletes, you know, people that dedicate their whole lives to their sports, it's not good enough to assume. We have to look at the data. We have to look at the science. Right now, the science shows that testosterone is the leading factor.
We usually hear in the news and politics and stuff is about trans women just because they're in so much prominence, because they are winning. Like, I can't remember what her name is right now, but she was a powerlifter. She is a powerlifter. I think she went to Tokyo Olympics, and she's transgender. And they're winning by a large amount.
That's not true. That's just factually incorrect. Trans people have been allowed to compete in the Olympics since 2004, and I'm pretty sure Laura Hubbard was the first trans woman to, you know, qualify for the weightlifting section, and she didn't even earn a title. She didn't even earn first, second, or third. To say that she's winning by a massive amount is just, it's just not true. And to say that trans women in general are dominating sports is also just not true, because if we were dominating, we'd be winning since 2004.
When I was going through high school, I wrestled against females. I had to suppress both my hormones in my body, and I was still able to beat the men too.
Oh damn, good for you, but that could not be safe. I feel like you need some sort of hormone, no? I mean, I guess it depends on your age or whatever, but I mean, I have no idea.
Trans athletes should have a separate category in certain sports.
Let me think about this. I think in theory that could be cool, but feasibly it's just not possible. You know what I mean? There's just not that many trans athletes.
I don't want to say that they should be in a completely different category, just because socially and legally, yes, they are that gender that they transition to, and putting them in another category just seems, from hindsight, seems wrong. But as an athlete, in the sporting world, it just does seem a little bit unfair if you classify them under the same group, I guess.
Yeah, I think that there definitely are some sports where your physical ability makes a much larger impact on the sport itself. Wrestling would be one of them, swimming, track, something like that. But if you look at NASCAR as a sport, I believe that anyone can then go and do that sort of sport because that's more of a technique. For swimming especially, if I were to decide that I would like to transition and then start all of the hormone therapy for a year or so, then obviously I would probably lose some muscle mass and I would slow down in my swimming, but I don't know if that slowdown would necessarily be enough to make it fair for the cis females.
That's exactly the problem. We don't have that data for each specific sport, but for track, I mean, we do have those numbers. So we see that athletic ability significantly decreases about 10 to 15%, which is, you know, the difference between men and women after testosterone is suppressed for an extended period of time.
To say that you can't perform unless you're in this group, there's just a lot of safety reasons for that individual that it's not good. Second thing, Where does the line draw? You're saying swimming, and you had mentioned earlier that like height was an advantage. Did I go through puberty as a male? Yes. But in order to say that I have an advantage because I was born with testosterone is the equivalent of saying that, oh, I went to this gym one time and I lifted and I had a protein shake, so I should never have to take a protein shake again because it's in my body. And the medicine I'm taking stops that testosterone. I don't have that anymore.
That is a good point. I like that point right there, because when cisgender men take performance-enhancing drugs, especially like when they take testosterone, are they permanently banned from that sport forever? Or do they have to take a certain amount of time to ensure that they are clean from those drugs before they can compete? I feel like it's kind of the same thing, no?
Are we going to start making categories for cis athletes? Okay, you're in a category if you're 5'9" and above, 5'7" to 5'9", 5'5" to 5'7", weights, like all those things. It's like, exactly where is the line drawn?
I mean, they do have weight categories.
Well, yeah, for
like,
certain.
Yeah, they do have weight categories because that is a significant factor. If somebody is 300 pounds of muscle versus 100 pounds of muscle, they're not on a level playing field. When we look at like heart size or like lung capacity, I don't really know if it's that significant, to be honest.
Every person is different. And like you're saying, like the cis women that were getting cut because they're naturally, more athletic to some standard that's set. It's like,
Or even the varying levels of testosterone.
Exactly.
You're in this box, so now you're in this league.
yeah.
I wasn't by any chance trying to discriminate against them and try and put them in their own category in that way. It was more just by a performance standpoint, we already do separate everyone into their own different levels. You don't have Olympic athletes coming and competing at state club levels.
I will say that I like how everybody's being super respectful, especially that man. He's so sweet. He's like, I didn't try to, I'm just, I'm sorry. But like state versus Olympic is just not comparable to trans versus cis, at least in my opinion. I feel like it's more so comparable to like high testosterone versus low testosterone.
Doesn't that defeat the purpose of trying to become a better athlete then?
See, I don't necessarily agree with something like that. I don't think that somebody that has, the typical testosterone level for a cisgender female should be competing against somebody that has the typical testosterone level for a cisgender male. I don't really think that that would be fair.
There's no proof of any trans athlete that is number one in any category right now.
Yeah, that's because I think they're being held back so much by just like the media and everything that you don't get to see their chance to shine.
You can't just be saying things. Like, you're literally just making shit up. Literally 3 minutes ago in this video, she was like, we see trans women, dominating in sports. And then she's like, well, we don't see any trans women dominating in sports because the media is holding them back. You can't go switching up.
What would you guys say to like transgender people who transitioned before puberty?
In that instance, I think I would take a step back and kind of look at it more at like my own argument, like it was a scientifically based on like puberty and stuff.
Your argument was not scientifically based. Let's be real. Sorry, continue.
So I would like consider like that would be different, but my mindset just coming into this, I mean, I think that most people go through transitioning like after puberty, or it's like encouraged to.
It's encouraged to because people hate transgender people and they're like, nope, don't transition. That is child abuse.
For me, it's more if they end up just fitting the category, regardless if they do it before puberty or after puberty. If they have the right amount of testosterone, they did all the right testing all beforehand, then why not? Then you don't even need to separate them.
Fully agree. Like, I agree with you. He needs to switch sides. I don't know. I don't want to speak on most trans people, but that's like, yeah. Yep. If you fit into the criteria, the regulations, then yeah, then you can compete. If you don't take testosterone blockers, if you don't have your hormones regulated for this amount of time, then you don't qualify. Sorry. I like him. He's my new fave.
Hormone testing is fair.
Come on, all the trans people coming out for the hormone testing. I absolutely support hormone testing, 100%. The data, as I've been saying this whole time, the data points at testosterone being that leading factor. So we need to regulate testosterone. But the gag of it is, once transgender women transition, their testosterone levels are actually, on average, lower than cisgender females. The Olympic cap for the amount of testosterone that a female can have in the, the female category is, I believe, 5 nanomoles per liter. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I think it's a nanomole. Mine, after going through bottom surgery, is less than 1 nanomole per liter. I think the typical cisgender range is 0.35 to 0.2 nanomoles per liter. So yeah, I'm right in there.
I personally think that the hormone testing is really important, and just coming from like a fitness perspective, like fitness, bodybuilding, like that sort of athletics, For me, I take a lot of pride in the fact that my testosterone levels are within the normal range of a cisgender male. Obviously, performance enhancers, right? Steroids, extra testosterone, all those things are thrown around among cisgender men in the fitness world to, enhance our performance, get bigger, all that sort of thing. And for me, being able to say like, no, I am within the normal range of a cisgender man. The muscle I'm putting on, I'm naturally putting on. I don't have an advantage over anybody else that's in that normal range. So I think for me, like, it's just really important because I'm like proud of that. And I think if you just assume that a trans person has an advantage because they're taking testosterone, it's kind of like, well, what about cis men that take testosterone?
The interesting thing about trans men athletes, especially in weightlifting, I don't think they're allowed in USA powerlifting at all because they're on testosterone. And they're like, well, nobody can take testosterone. That disqualifies you. But like cisgender men have, like he said, a certain amount of testosterone. I believe theirs is on average 10 to 35 nanomoles per liter. When trans men take testosterone, they're trying to get up into that level. They're trying to go from the cis female range to the cis male range. They're not trying to be over here beyond cisgender male ranges, which is what they're testing for in powerlifting, because if you're over here, then that's not fair. But to say that just because they're on testosterone, it's not fair, it's just not really accurate. They're just trying to be at the same level as cisgender men.
Testing for hormones is fine. The issue is what you're gonna do with that, because as I said earlier, it's really hard to put someone in a box because there's always averages here and there for male and female, but especially when you start making your way up in the competition pool, those norms go out the window. And it then gets even more difficult to write legislation on what a male can compete in and what a female can compete in for if their hormone levels are outside of this said box. A cis female that's competing in a high level of track might have a normal male testosterone, so now are you going to kick them out because now their testosterone levels are too high? And that's where legislation can get really difficult to write.
I do understand what he's trying to say here, but in these elite sports, they're not really going off of averages. They're not saying you have to be at the average testosterone level. They're saying you have to be in the normal range for a healthy cisgender woman. So with somebody like Caster Semenya, they have what they call a difference in sexual development, meaning that their testosterone levels are up into the natural male range. If we truly want it to be fair to cisgender females, then we need to regulate that testosterone the same way that we would regulate it for trans women. I do understand that, like, that's just her body, that's just the way she was born, and like, love you, girl, I'm not, no hate to you, but the whole point of having these separate categories is so that there's a fair competition, and if your testosterone is up in the male range, it's not a fair competition. This is what the Olympic Committee said about it. This is how they qualify that somebody has a difference in sexual development. The Olympic Committee said it better than I did, so read that.
I am treated fairly by my fellow athletes.
I can't answer this question because, again, I'm not an athlete.
I joined roller derby only like 4 months after I decided to transition and get onto hormones. Everyone from the beginning was very accepting. Roller derby is almost too accepting. From my experience, because I forgot how bad the real world can be sometimes. No.
Growing up, in my club, I trained with my brother, and we were like kind of in the distance group, so it was mostly guys there, and they never really saw me as like she's a girl, they just saw me as like another competitor, and it was always just fun, like racing, and like it just made me grow up love being in the sporting world and being competitive with everyone, so yeah.
I don't understand. So you're okay with competing against boys, but you're not okay with competing against trans women?
I definitely get a lot of hate like online, but I've never personally gotten any like issues. Like everyone that's in the gym is just trying to get better for the most part.
In high school, when I came out like prominently, everybody knew that I was trans, and there was a coach that exploited me in a lawsuit to try to ban me in high school. Yeah.
Damn. Transphobes really do be crazy, huh? That is wild. A literal freshman in high school attacked by this old coach. I feel bad for that guy. I really do. But if you notice, the other two trans people said that, people that I compete with, people that I played my sport with, they don't really care. And I feel like that's a really common thing, is the people that are actually playing the sport are like, whatever. We're all just trying to, get better, just trying to do what we like to do. They're cool. I feel like the outrage about trans people playing sports is more so online. It's more so in the media.
Sports should be gender neutral.
So I think that sports should be gender neutral when possible. Like they said earlier with like NASCAR, gaming, skill-based sports, I think that those could definitely be gender neutral because that physical ability is not really a factor. However, with track or swimming or those more physically demanding sports, I think that it is necessary that we separate men and women because cisgender men do typically outperform cisgender females. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, it's not bad to admit that, you know, on average, men are stronger than women.
Your body's a vessel. It shouldn't matter whether you're male or female, because I feel like the sport, like sports in general, is growing. Especially there's this like little girl in wrestling. She wrestled in the junior division in wrestling and nationals in the 106-pound division, and she kicked all the guys' asses. Yeah. I was like, go for you.
Yeah, see, I disagree with that. Maybe at like a lower level it could be fine because, you know, like he pointed out, it's not really significant, but when we're talking about elite athletes, you know, the best of the best, cisgender men are going to outperform cisgender women. Like, that's just how it's going to be.
I actually rode and showed equestrian for 10 years, and I was like one of two men at the time. And then there are other roller derby leagues that are co-ed, and they work fine.
The issue that I would start seeing with this is when we start looking at scholarships.
I hate that argument so much. Like, it's literally such an easy fix. You can make a scholarship that's just for women. Even if they're not the top performer, they may be the top female performer. So you give it to them. It's not hard.
And for college level, if you start combining the sports by gender, then scholarships are always given to the top athletes. What happens to the females that now need that scholarship necessarily to go to college, but now you've just all thrown them into one category? It all of a sudden breaks that whole opportunity for them to maybe even go to college.
I feel as though making all sports gender neutral in that way, there is still some biological benefits to being born a man versus being born a female.
I agree with that to the extent that, like, a typical cisgender man versus a typical cisgender woman, but I don't think that that extends to, you know, trans women that are on testosterone blockers and estrogen, whatever. The rest of this video is pretty much, you know, just like, oh, thanks for coming, thanks for being civil. I think it was a really, really good civil conversation, which I love to see. A lot of people like to just freak out at trans people and say, oh, you're just trying to take away women's rights and take away their opportunities, blah, 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 blah. And it's just, I don't know. I don't like that. To wrap this all up, let's get more data. Let's get more data. Let's get on it. Somebody get on it. More data, please. Let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know your opinions. Let me know your thoughts. If you guys like this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up down below. It really helps out my channel a lot. Make sure to subscribe if you are not already and you would like to be. And yeah, other than that, I think I'm going to go. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, everyone.